We pick up our journey in Christian education from 1931 to 1961 in April of 1944, when Miss Moore reported that attendance was showing a strong upturn since the new point system had started, and likewise there had been a very positive response church-wide to the new church school time. She also introduced what she titled a Grand and Specific Aims for LABC Church School 1944 to 1945 that included a revised budget, Vacation Bible School, Children's Day planning, Church School Workers' Convocation, Rally Day and Promotion Day, and a new leadership course. Shortly thereafter came the resignation of Earl Davis, chair of the Church Picnic Committee, and he said this: "Under the present wartime conditions, we cannot justify ourselves in the outlay of gasoline, food, and other supplies that will be necessary for such an undertaking. Also, the resultant publicity, in my opinion, will react unfavorably towards our church, as we are precedent setters in the church field. Much time will be taken away from war work by a good many people to carry through such a program, and at this time it can ill be spared." As a result, the church picnic in 1944 and all departmental picnics were canceled that year. In 1946, things picked up when Reverend Stanley Borden became assistant pastor at LABC. He reported on building changes that were nearing the completion at the end of summer, and also suggested that the church school board adopt a committee that was forming a number of different committees: the visitation committee, the personnel committee, a curriculum committee, and a teacher training committee. In May of 1948, the church school constitution was revised, making a significant change in how classes were organized. In October of 1948, the Newlyweds Club asked to begin a Sunday evening group. In January 1949, plans were laid to hold a 10-week teacher training program. It would begin with the kindergarten. 20 parents would be contacted to see if they would allow their children to participate in a class that would be used as a model for the training. This class would be taught by the trainees under the supervision of the program's professional leadership. And even though the church school constitution had been revised in 1948, it was once again revised in 1949, and the major change was the definition of church school. The significance of this change is that it signals the beginnings of the integration between the Sabbath school, or church school, or Sunday school entity that had begun in 1865, and the church entity, which was founded in 1871. For 84 years, the two had operated cooperatively but independently. And a few months later, at the August board meeting, it was noted that the kindergarten attendance had become too large for the space that was allotted to it. Therefore, that kindergarten class was divided into 2 classes. This was a precursor to what would come. The boomers were on their way and would necessitate significant changes well into the 1960s. And it was finally at the August 14, 1950 meeting that the funds of the Lake Avenue Memorial Church School were consolidated with the funds of the Lake Avenue Baptist Memorial Church and Society, and the 2 entities were officially made one. Here we have Miss Anderson, who was hired to help in the church school to be paid along with other student ministers. And by March of 1951, it was reported that Mr. Bentley's Saturday afternoon basketball program was flourishing. The intent of this program was to meet the needs for the neighborhood boys. In September of 1951, Mr. Borden introduced Donald Deere, a new student at CRDS, who came to work with the youth and taught the 11th and 12th grade mixed church school class. Here we have the 1951-1952 Board of Education. Here we have a picture of our nursery kids. It's also interesting that at the April meeting of the board, Mr. Borden reported that the church school broadcast on the second Sunday of each month was reaching an estimated 57,000 folk, which compared favorably to the big time broadcasts. From the beginning of the Fairport Baptist Home, different entities within the church fostered relationships with that ministry, in particular the Women's Mission Society, but also the church school, which presented programs and visited residents. By January 1954, the idea of having a General Council of Representatives made up of a representative from each of the church boards or entities was raised. The council would act as a coordinating or planning agency for the discussion and problems as they arose. It was decided that the Board of Education would carry this idea forward to the other entities. This was beginning of what was called a church council. At the September 1954 board meeting, Dr. Hill announced that Reverend Herbert Grant had accepted the call to become the Director of Religious Education at LABC. Reverend Grant would begin his ministry in early 1955. One of his first tasks was to bring the children's story during worship on January 16th. This was the beginning of the children's story time in worship at LABC. At the April meeting, Dr. Bevan showed a film strip on the Year of Baptist Advancement, which was a program of the Northern Baptist Convention, which was a denominational-wide program, and he encouraged the board to participate. A motion was made and the program was heartily recommended to the advisory board of the church, and the program would take place from 1955 to 1956. Here we have a number of materials from that church year, including a list of major activities, a message to the teachers, responsibilities of the Children's Work Committee, as well as an attendance advancement record, and an attachment that was used to keep track of families. Miss Sita Allen reported to the board on all of those who attended the various camps during the summer. And on Sunday, October 30th, the annual service of dedication for church school workers was conducted during the regular morning service. And finally, we have an image here of a neighborhood service project.